with the Father and the Holy Spirit.
Little pigs, let me come in.
Defender of the human race.
Not by the hair on your chin, chin, chin. And I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in.
By the judge of the living and the dead.
The old house creaked and groaned in the wind. The only light came from the flickering candles on the fireplace. The young woman sat in a chair, her eyes wide with fear. She had heard the stories about the house, about the ghosts that were said to haunt it. She didn't believe them at first, but now she wasn't so sure. She heard a noise outside the window. She held her breath, listening. The noise came again, closer this time. She could see a figure standing in the shadows. It was a man, tall and thin, with long dark hair. His eyes were glowing red. The woman screamed and ran out of the room. She didn't stop running until she was safe inside her car. She drove away as fast as she could, never looking back. Today, I am here to talk about supernatural horror movies are a subgenre of horror that deals with the forces of evil that lie beyond the natural world. These films can be very scary because they tap into our deepest fears of the unknown. In this video, I'm going to talk about the history of supernatural horror movies, some of the most famous examples of the genre, and why they are so scary. History of supernatural horror movies. The supernatural horror film subgenre has a long and rich history dating back to the early days of the cinema. Some of the earliest examples of the supernatural films include Georges Méliès, The Devil's Castle, and F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. These films drew on the traditions of the Gothic literature and folklore to create a sense of dread and unease. In the 1930s, of the supernatural horror including Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman. These films were often set in historical period and featured elaborate costumes and set. In the 1940s, supernatural horror films began to take on a more contemporary settings. Films like The Cat People, The Ghost of the Frankenstein explored the dark side of the human nature and the supernatural forces that lurked just beneath the surface. The 1970s saw a resurgence of interest in supernatural horror films, with films like The Exorcist, The Omen becoming major box office successes. These films were categorized by their graphic violence and disturbing imagery. The 1980s saw a new wave of supernatural horror films, many of which were inspired by the works of Stephen King. Films like Carrie, The Shining, and The Poltergeist explored the dark side of childhood and the power of the human imagination. In the 1990s and 2000s, supernatural horror films continued to evolve with films like The Sixth Sense, The Ring, and The Conjuring, blurring the lines between the real and the supernatural. Today's supernatural horror films are still popular subgenre of the horror genre, and it seems that it is the third most scariest subgenre of horror genre. And the recent films are The Babadook, Hereditary, their recent one, Talk to Me, and also a new one, Insidious, The Red Door, have continued to explore the dark side of human nature and the terrifying power of the unknown. Why are supernatural horror movies so scary? There are few reasons why supernatural horror movies are so scary. First, they tap into our deepest fear of the unknown. We don't know what these forces are, what they do, what they want, and where they came from. This uncertainty makes them all the more terrifying. Second, supernatural horror movies often deal with our darkest fears about ourselves. They explore our fears of death, madness, and evil. These are the things that we try to keep hidden away, but they can't be hidden forever. Third, supernatural horror movies are often very visually disturbing. They use special effects and makeup to create images that are both frightening and unforgettable. Supernatural horror movies are a powerful and disturbing subgenre of horror. They tap into our deepest fears and anxieties, and they can be very scary. If you are looking for a good scare, then a supernatural horror movie is the perfect choice for you. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on supernatural horror movies of the subgenre of horror movies that I'm doing the series. And if you did, please subscribe to my channel for more of this content. I'm not gonna upload only these type of content, but I'm also gonna review some new movies also, and also some like hidden cases, and so that please subscribe so that you can get access early. And don't forget to click the button if you find this video very helpful and entertaining. So yeah, peace out.